Hi everyone, I'm Olivia Bennett. It's 2:17 a.m. right now, and I'm sitting on the living room floor, the TV's flickering blue light casting weird shadows across the walls, an untouched cup of chamomile tea gone cold beside me. I've been sitting here for hours, just stuck, because 5 days ago, my husband Ryan died of a sudden heart attack, and tonight I found out my parents, my own flesh and blood, care more about money than they do about me or my daughter. It feels unreal saying that out loud. You think betrayal comes from enemies or strangers, not the people who are supposed to show up when your life implodes. But life doesn't follow a script, and if you're not ready for the plot twists, you might not survive them. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It helps knowing I'm not completely alone in this dark little corner of the internet. Now turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for some soothing background noise, and let's dive into tonight's journey together. It started last Thursday. Typical morning chaos. Emily, my 8-year-old, couldn't find her soccer cleats. I burned the waffles. Ryan misplaced his wallet again. We laughed through it, like always, teasing each other about how organized we were. Ryan kissed me on the forehead, ruffled Emily's curls, and promised to be home early for her school art show. His last words, "And hey, babe, real maple syrup next time. Not that fake stuff, all right?" He grinned, wagging his eyebrows like it was some grand romantic gesture. That was Ryan, a goofball wrapped in accountant khakis, all heart and bad puns. By 11:04 a.m., my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped, the kind of drop where your body knows something before your brain catches up. I answered, expecting maybe a school nurse call or a wrong number. Instead, a shaky voice whispered words that splintered my entire world. "Mrs. Bennett, this is Jessica. I work with your husband." He collapsed in a meeting. They're taking him to St. Luke's. I remember everything about that moment. The coffee cup slipping from my hand, shattering across the hardwood floor. The wet socks from stepping in the spill, the high-pitched whine filling my ears as my pulse roared louder than her words. I must have blacked out for a few seconds, because suddenly I was grabbing my keys, yelling for our neighbor to pick up Emily, and racing down the freeway like I was chasing time itself. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the steering wheel. I prayed the whole way, bargaining with whatever higher power might be listening. "Please, please don't take him. I'll do anything. Emily needs him." But I was too late. By the time I skidded into the ER parking lot, practically throwing the car into park, Ryan was gone. Massive heart attack. They said he likely died instantly. Nothing anyone could have done, the doctor explained, like those words made it better somehow. I remember staring at Ryan's body, still warm, too. Still waiting for his chest to rise, for him to crack some ridiculous dad joke, for the nightmare to glitch and reality to reboot. But all I got was silence. And now I sit here staring at his old hoodie draped over the couch, still faintly smelling like him Irish Spring and overpriced coffee. Emily's asleep upstairs, curled around one of Ryan's t-shirts like it's a security blanket. The house feels wrong without his laugh bouncing off the walls. The emptiness hums in every corner. And the worst part, it wasn't just the universe that gutted me. It was my parents, the people who should have been my lifeline after losing the love of my life. Instead, they made it abundantly clear my grief was inconvenient. My pain was secondary. Their comfort, their image, their bank account. Those took priority. I'll tell you exactly how that betrayal unfolded. But fair warning, if you've ever trusted someone only to watch them twist the knife when you were already bleeding, this story might hit too close to home. But I need to say it, because silence only helps the people who hurt you. And tonight I'm done being quiet. Ryan and I weren't supposed to be one of those statistics, the couple that life steamrolls early. We met our sophomore year at UCLA. Picture this: me, Olivia Bennett, 20 years old, tripping over my own feet outside an econ lecture hall, papers flying everywhere like it was some low-budget rom-com, and Ryan Tall, painfully patient, wearing a faded Dodgers cap backward, crouching down to help me gather my disaster of a backpack. You know, he teased, handing me my intro to microeconomics book. They say clumsiness is directly proportional to brilliance. I rolled my eyes so hard I probably sprained something, but I couldn't help smiling. He had this ease about him, like he wasn't rushing through life even though everyone else around us was. We ended up sitting next to each other in class. He was the teaching assistant technically off limits, but I didn't realize that for weeks. I just thought he was some overachiever who loved graphs way too much. Our first real conversation happened during office hours, where I was ready to cry over depreciation curves and marginal costs. Ryan stayed late walking me through the concepts with the patience of a saint. He used ridiculous analogies about tacos depreciating in value if you leave them out overnight, and somehow economics started to make sense. It wasn't just his brain, though, it was the way he listened. Like I wasn't just another student panicking about finals, but an actual person. We started seeing each other outside of class, late-night burrito runs on Santa Monica Boulevard, sunset hikes in Griffith Park, heated debates over who made the best coffee in Westwood. And somewhere between econ problem sets and taco truck stops, I fell for him. Hard. Our friends thought we were insane when we got engaged the week after graduation. 23 broke no clear career path yet. But love isn't always about timing. Sometimes it's about knowing when you've met your person, the one who calms your storm without trying to change your weather. We got married on a blindingly sunny September afternoon at a tiny beach in Malibu. My dress was rented, Ryan's suit barely fit, but our vows, those were rock solid. For better or worse, for stress and spreadsheets, for laughter and loss. Ryan had added that last part with a wink, already anticipating how life loved to throw curveballs. Turns out life threw more than we expected. After graduation, we moved to San Diego. Ryan landed a junior analyst job at a boutique financial advisory firm, and I worked reception at a real estate office while finishing my graphic design certification. We built our life from scratch, tiny apartment, mismatched furniture, secondhand dreams. The thing about Ryan? He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the guy buying new cars or bragging about promotions. But his work ethic impeccable, his loyalty unshakable. Clients loved him because he genuinely cared not just about their portfolios, but about their peace of mind. Within 5 years, he was lead advisor, quietly climbing the ranks while keeping his priorities in check. We had 5 solid years of just us, movie marathons, weekend road trips up the coast, inside jokes about whose turn it was to kill the spiders. And then came the hardest chapter, trying to start a family. I always assumed getting pregnant was easy. You love each other, you plan, it happens. Except it didn't. 2 miscarriages, countless doctor visits, a failed round of IVF that drained our savings and our spirits. Every negative test felt like a slap from the universe. We started discussing adoption, trying to brace ourselves for a different version of parenthood, when suddenly, against all odds, I was pregnant. It wasn't an easy pregnancy. Bed rest for 2 months, hospital scares. But Ryan. He transformed into this superhuman partner. Every morning he'd bring me breakfast in bed, terrible pancakes shaped like dinosaurs' hearts, sometimes unidentifiable blobs. He massaged my swollen feet, read parenting books aloud with hilarious commentary, and talked to our baby like she could already hear him. And when Emily finally arrived, tiny, fierce, squawking louder than the delivery room monitors, Ryan cried harder than I did. "This is it," he whispered, holding her like she was made of glass. "This is our everything." He kept that promise. For 8 years, Ryan was more than a dad. He was Emily's soccer coach, bedtime storyteller, pancake chef, homework helper, and her fiercest protector. Our fridge was plastered with her drawings. Our weekends revolved around her games and dance recitals. Ryan's calendar looked like a color-coded war zone, Emily's events in blue, work deadlines in red, date nights in green. He never missed a thing. But life has this cruel habit of creeping in quietly. Warning signs masked as stress. Chest pains brushed off as nothing. We laughed about him being almost 40 and falling apart. Bought him a gym membership. Stocked up on kale and vitamins. Neither of us realized we were running out of time. And now here I am, tracing the ghost of his laugh through this too-silent house, wondering how everything unraveled so fast. We always pictured parenthood as this chaotic, joyful mess of finger-painting disasters, scraped knees, and bedtime negotiations. But what they never tell you is how fragile those dreams can be, how easily life threads itself through heartbreak before handing you a miracle. Our journey to Emily was nothing short of brutal. After the second miscarriage, I stopped believing my body knew what it was doing. I remember lying on the bathroom floor, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, Ryan cradling me as I cried so hard my chest physically ached. His hoodie smelled like fresh laundry and desperation. "I can't do this again," I whispered. Ryan didn't argue. He didn't throw out cliches about fate or God's timing. He just held me tighter, his chin resting on my head, and whispered back, "Then we won't." That's who Ryan was. Never pressured, never demanded. He let me grieve on my terms, even when I barely recognized myself in the mirror. After that, we stopped trying. Or more accurately, we stopped chasing it with charts, clinics, and calendars. We traveled, remodeled our condo, poured ourselves into work. We even started the paperwork for adoption, something I'd always been open to but hadn't imagined happening so soon. And then life threw one of its rare, inexplicable mercies. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because I was late for a client meeting, the bathroom mirror fogged up from my rushed shower, and that little plastic stick was supposed to confirm what I already assumed: another disappointment. Instead, 2 lines appeared, bold, unapologetic. I stood there for 10 minutes, the world spinning sideways, clutching the test like it might disappear if I blinked. When Ryan got home, I shoved it at him, unable to form words. His eyes widened, and for the first time in months, real, unfiltered hope bloomed across his face. "We're—" He trailed off, blinking rapidly. I nodded, laughter bubbling out alongside the tears. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness that felt more like all-day food poisoning. Swollen ankles the size of grapefruits. A terrifying premature labor scare at 30 weeks that landed me on strict bed rest. But Ryan, God, that man leveled up in every possible way. He learned to cook burnt pancakes at first, but he nailed the dinosaur shapes eventually. He read those cheesy baby books with over-the-top character voices. He massaged my feet so gently, like even my toes were made of porcelain. At night, he'd press his hand to my belly, whispering stories about space and dinosaurs, and how our little girl was going to conquer the world. And when Emily finally arrived, screaming her tiny lungs out, Ryan crumbled into tears. His whole body shook as he held her for the first time, whispering over and over, "She's perfect. She's perfect." We did it. Emily was tiny, barely 6 pounds, but she ruled our world from day one. Ryan fell into fatherhood like he was born for it. Midnight feedings, diaper blowouts, toddler meltdowns. He handled it all with that same steady patience he'd used to explain econ curves to me years ago. I swear our daughter had him wrapped around her finger before she could even hold her head up. He coached her soccer team despite knowing nothing about the sport. Stayed up late watching YouTube tutorials so he wouldn't embarrass himself at practice. He packed her lunches with ridiculous notes like, "Remember, you're braver than homework." He built pillow forts that rivaled engineering feats and performed tea parties with the seriousness of a corporate presentation. The man who could barely boil water became the master of dinosaur-shaped pancakes every Saturday morning. He even upgraded to unicorns and stars when Emily went through her astronaut princess phase. Our little family wasn't perfect, but it was real. Full of messy mornings, bedtime snuggles, and inside jokes. There were warning signs, though. Ones we laughed off because that's what you do when life feels good. You assume the bad stuff can't touch you. Ryan would get these sharp chest pains sometimes after stressful days at work. He blamed tight muscles. He'd lose his breath during backyard soccer games with Emily. Blamed dad bod creeping in. The doctor mentioned his blood pressure creeping higher than ideal. Normal for guys his age with demanding jobs, she'd said, scribbling a prescription for low-dose aspirin. We bought him one of those fancy smartwatches to track his heart rate. He joked about feeling old. We stocked up on leafy greens, cut back on takeout, tried to be better. But deep down, I think part of me knew. There's this quiet dread that settles in your bones when the person you love shows cracks, tiny fractures, that whisper, "This can't last forever." I ignored it, clung to normalcy. Because facing the alternative meant acknowledging how fragile happiness truly is. And now those ignored signs haunt me. Emily fell asleep tonight, clutching one of Ryan's old t-shirts, her tiny frame curled up like she's trying to shrink the ache. I watched her chest rise and fall, the same way I used to watch Ryan breathe in his sleep, marveling that this man, this love, this life was ours. And now he's gone, just like that. And as if that weren't enough tonight, my parents reminded me that some losses reveal not just grief, but the rotten core of the people you thought you could trust. But I'll get to that part, I promise. It's strange how the signs were there all along, disguised as ordinary life. Ryan had always been healthy, or so we believed. He wasn't some marathon runner, but he played backyard soccer with Emily, carried groceries up 3 flights of stairs, hiked with me on weekends. Sure, he'd huff a little at the top of the trail, but so did I. Stress who didn't have that. His job at the financial firm came with long hours, tight deadlines, and demanding clients. But Ryan thrived under pressure, or so he claimed. The first time he mentioned chest pain, we were sitting on the couch binging a nature documentary while Emily built a Lego castle on the floor. He pressed a hand to his ribs, grimaced slightly. Just stress, he waved me off before I could panic. Too much coffee, too many spreadsheets. I wasn't convinced, but I let it go. You don't want to believe your healthy 30-something husband might be in danger. Denial wraps itself around love like a security blanket. A few weeks later, it happened again. He blamed it on bad posture, the ergonomic chair he'd been meaning to replace for months. When he finally went in for his annual physical, his blood pressure was elevated. Not alarming according to the doctor, just keep an eye on it levels. The prescription more leafy greens, cut back on sodium, exercise when possible. Typical mid-30s advice. We bought him one of those sleek, overpriced fitness watches, heart rate monitor, step counter, the whole works. He teased Emily that she had to help him beat his daily step goal. For a while, things seemed okay. But looking back, there were more red flags than I admitted. Ryan's energy wasn't the same. He'd come home from work exhausted, blaming it on long meetings and market volatility. The man who once wrestled Emily on the living room rug now opted for quiet evenings on the couch. At night, I'd sometimes hear his breathing hitch slightly, shallow, uneven. He always brushed it off, told me I was overthinking. And I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. Because the alternative meant facing that terrifying abyss, where the person you love, your partner, your anchor, might not be invincible. So I rationalized. We both did. He made doctor's appointments, followed advice, half-heartedly joked about his approaching old man status. The scariest thing, life lulled us into that dangerous comfort zone where symptoms blur with normal stress, until they don't. The morning everything changed started like any other. I was in the kitchen throwing together Emily's lunch while she chattered about her art project, some wild combination of glitter pipe cleaners and what looked like macaroni. Ryan was flipping pancakes, determined to master dinosaur shapes. His tongue poked out in concentration as he carefully poured batter into the griddle, turning blobs into something vaguely resembling a T-Rex. "You're gonna have the coolest lunchbox art today," he told Emily, sliding her plate onto the table. She giggled, climbing onto the chair, proudly inspecting her breakfast. Ryan leaned over, kissed my cheek. His hand lingered at my waist, a familiar warmth anchoring me to the moment. "I'll be home early, promise," he said, grabbing his keys. "Big client meeting this morning, but I'll make it to Emily's art show. Don't let her hang all that macaroni glory without me." His final words before walking out the door. "And babe, real maple syrup next time. None of that fake corn syrup stuff. It's a crime against pancakes." I rolled my eyes, laughing, shoving him gently toward the door. He smiled, that crooked grin, the one that made his eyes crinkle, the one that still melts me even now. And then he was gone. Hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Gut instinct twisted, a woman's voice trembling, barely coherent. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm Jessica. I work with Ryan." He collapsed in the conference room. "They're taking him to St. Luke's." The room spun. My mug shattered on the tile. Emily's laughter upstairs suddenly felt a universe away. I moved on autopilot, calling our neighbor, grabbing keys, bolting to the car. The freeway blurred past me as I sped toward the hospital, whispering desperate prayers into the steering wheel, bargaining with the universe. "Please, God, I'll do anything. Don't take him. Emily needs him. I need him." But fate doesn't negotiate. By the time I reached the ER, Ryan was gone. Massive heart attack, they said. Instantaneous. Nothing they could have done. I remember staring at his body, expecting him to stir, to crack some ridiculous joke about faking it for the drama. But his chest never rose. His skin, still warm, couldn't mask the stillness beneath. And suddenly my entire world tilted off its axis. The man I built a life with, gone. Just like that. I stayed at the hospital for hours, answering questions, signing papers, floating through a fog so dense I barely remembered my name. What haunted me most? The ordinariness of our last conversation. Maple syrup, pancakes, art shows, no grand declarations, no dramatic goodbyes, just life, and then death. And then, a brutal reminder that even the most beautiful chapters can end mid-sentence. I used to wonder how people survive the unthinkable. The answer is, they don't. Not really. You just exist. You float, you fracture, you stumble through tasks that feel grotesquely ordinary while your soul screams for everything to stop. The hours after Ryan's death. A haze of sterile hallways, clipped voices, and paperwork. I could barely see through the tears. I signed forms with shaking hands, heard doctors mumble condolences like they were reading from cue cards. Nurses patted my shoulder, their eyes filled with practiced sympathy, the kind reserved for shattered spouses and tragic statistics. What I remember most vividly, the unbearable silence after they left me alone with him. The room smelled like antiseptic and sorrow. His skin was still warm when I pressed my palm to his cheek, my other hand gripping his lifeless fingers. "Wake up," I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of impossible hope. He didn't. The stillness was deafening. His chest, always rising, always strong, remained immobile. The heart that had carried our love, our life, our laughter, silenced. I sat there for what felt like hours, forehead resting against his whispering fragments of memories, inside jokes, vacation plans, all the things we still had to do. But no amount of whispered love can outrun death. Eventually, they needed the room. They spoke gently, but their words cut like glass. It was time to go home. Except, what was home now? The drive back blurred around me, red lights, honking cars, my trembling hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. And then, Emily, our daughter, our miracle, our oblivious, blue-eyed little girl waiting for her daddy to show up at her art show. I parked outside the school, lungs constricting so tightly I thought I'd pass out. How do you tell an 8-year-old her hero isn't coming home? Emily bounded toward the car, backpack bouncing glitter smudged across her cheek from craft time. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, her face lighting up like it always did when she talked about him. "He promised he'd be at the show tonight." I pulled over, unable to drive another inch. My hands were ice cold. My heart pounded like it might implode. Turning to her, I took her small hands in mine. "Baby, something very sad happened today." Her brow furrowed, sensing the gravity before the words even left my mouth. "Daddy got really sick at work. His heart, it stopped working." She blinked, processing, her grip tightening on my hands. "But the doctors can fix it, right? They always fix stuff." Her innocent hope cracked something deep inside me. I forced the words past the lump in my throat. "No, sweetheart. They tried. But Daddy died today." Her silence was the longest, heaviest moment of my life. And then the sound, a primal wail that didn't seem human. Her tiny body collapsed into mine, shaking with sobs so raw they felt torn from her soul. "I want Daddy," she sobbed over and over, her fists clenching my sweater. "Please, I want my Daddy." There was nothing I could do but hold her, rocking back and forth, whispering through my own tears. "I know, baby. I know." Life moved around us. Cars passing, birds chirping, the sun hanging mockingly in the sky, while our world disintegrated on the side of the road. That night, I tucked Emily into our bed, her arms wrapped around Ryan's unwashed t-shirt, inhaling the faint remnants of his scent. She fell asleep eventually, small, hiccuping breaths punctuating the silence. I slipped into the bathroom, collapsed onto the cold tile floor, and broke apart entirely. Sobs racked my body, grief clawing its way through every cell. The physical pain of loss, sharp, suffocating, radiated through my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I needed someone. Shaking, I called my parents, the people who raised me, who should have known how to steady me when the ground crumbled. My mom answered after several rings, music, and chatter in the background. Olivia, can I call you back? We're at Ethan's promotion party. My brother's promotion. A party. Champagne glasses clinking while my life dissolved into ash. Mom, it's Ryan. He's gone. The line went silent. I heard her cover the phone, murmuring to someone else. When she returned, her voice was vaguely somber but still distracted. Oh my goodness. That's terrible. Are you sure maybe there's a mistake? I squeezed my eyes shut, the disbelief slicing deeper than the grief. I saw him, Mom. There's no mistake. A pause, more muffled voices. Well, this is such a shock, but we're in the middle of Ethan's party. Can you manage tonight? We'll come by tomorrow when things settle down. My brain short-circuited. Her words didn't compute. Manage? Tonight, Mom, my husband just died. Emily lost her father. And you're at a party. My dad got on the line, his tone patronizing, the same one he used when I was a teenager, overreacting. This is awful, Liv, but is Ryan's life insurance up to date? You should call the company first thing tomorrow. Not I'm on my way. Not what do you need, just life insurance. I hung up. I stared at my phone, disgust churning alongside grief. Strangers had shown more compassion than my own parents. That was the moment everything shifted. Because sometimes losing the love of your life reveals exactly who your real family is and who never was. I always thought explaining death to a child would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. Turns out I was wrong. What came after was worse. Emily barely slept that first night. She tossed and turned, calling for Ryan in her sleep, clutching his t-shirt like it could anchor her to a version of our life that still existed. Every time she whimpered, I smoothed her hair back, whispering stories about her daddy, the silly songs he made up at breakfast, the way he called her his brave little adventurer, the time he built that crooked birdhouse she still bragged about. It broke me, but I did it. Because that's what parents do. We hold it together while our world burns, so our kids don't completely unravel. Morning came gray and too quiet. I stared at the ceiling for hours, counting the cracks in the plaster, dreading the sun creeping through the blinds. Because daylight meant phone calls, arrangements, decisions I wasn't ready to make. The funeral home needed answers, cremation or burial. Did he have a favorite suit, flowers, music? How do you plan goodbye for your person when you're still convinced they're going to walk through the door any minute? I fumbled through it, numb and robotic, only half hearing the voices on the other end of the phone. When Emily woke up, her first words shattered what little composure I had left. Mommy, did Daddy go to heaven? Her voice cracked on the last word, her eyes wide and brimming with impossible hope. I wanted to lie. I wanted to promise her that Ryan was watching over us, that he was somewhere safe, smiling down. But the truth tasted bitter. I don't know, baby, I whispered, pulling her into my lap. But wherever he is, Daddy loves you more than anything. She buried her face in my shirt, her small body trembling. I miss him, she sobbed. I want him to come home. Me too. God, me too. I stayed strong for her, but when she drifted back to sleep that afternoon, I broke. I called my parents again, clinging to the desperate hope that their previous indifference was shock, that surely once reality settled in, they'd show up for me. My mom answered, her voice muffled, the hum of conversation and music still buzzing in the background. Olivia, we're just sitting down for brunch. What's wrong now? What's wrong now? Her words hit like a slap. Ryan's gone. Mom, gone. Emily's asking questions I can't answer, and I'm drowning here. A pause. I heard silverware clinking, someone laughing distantly. We'll come by tomorrow, she promised, her tone practiced. Once things calm down. Calm down. I hung up. That was the moment the grief twisted into something sharper: betrayal. When you're at rock bottom, you expect your family to be the rope, the anchor. Instead, they became another weight dragging me under. The funeral came fast, too fast. 4 days after Ryan died, we stood in the funeral home surrounded by flowers and somber faces. Emily wore the blue dress Ryan loved, the one he said made her look like a princess. I braided her hair the way he used to, my hands trembling as I wove the strands. Friends, neighbors, Ryan's co-workers, they all showed up raw and broken, their grief, real, their tears unfiltered. My parents, late, of course. They arrived 20 minutes after the service started. My mother flustered my father, scanning the room with that calculating look I'd seen 100 times. They made small talk, hugged the right people, offered hollow condolences. But their eyes weren't red from crying. When I stood at the podium, trying to eulogize the man who made our life beautiful, I caught my dad checking his watch. Emily sat in the front row, clutching a tissue, her small shoulders shaking. I spoke about Ryan's ridiculous jokes, his stubborn love for real maple syrup, his devotion to our family. The words felt brittle, barely containing the storm brewing beneath my skin. Afterward, at the reception in our house, the cracks widened. My dad cornered me near the kitchen, voice low, eyes sharp. "You need to think practically now, Olivia. Life insurance, have you filed the claim? You and Emily need to be secure." Secure. As if that payout was some prize, some windfall. My husband's death wasn't a transaction, but the worst part. My father didn't stop there. His eyes flicked around the room, calculating cold. Half of that money should go toward family obligations. "We raised you, paid for your college, helped with your down payment. It's only fair." Fair. I nearly dropped my glass. My knees wobbled under the weight of his audacity. Before I could answer, Emily tugged my hand, her eyes wide with exhaustion and confusion. "Mommy, can we go upstairs?" I nodded, heart pounding. We escaped to her room, the one filled with fairy lights and soccer posters and pieces of Ryan everywhere. As Emily curled beside me, I stared at the ceiling, fury simmering beneath the grief. My parents weren't grieving, they were circling like vultures. And I realized right then protecting Emily meant more than holding her through the sobs. It meant drawing a line, even if that line cut right through blood ties. The morning after the funeral, the house was too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that brings peace, the oppressive kind. The kind that buzzes in your ears, fills the spaces grief hasn't yet devoured. Emily padded into the kitchen, her eyes puffy, her curls a tangled mess. She grabbed Ryan's favorite coffee mug off the counter, the one that said "World's Okayest Golfer," and hugged it to her chest. "Daddy never got to use this week," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I knelt beside her, smoothing her hair back, forcing a small smile I didn't feel. "He'd want you to have it," I told her gently. "It's yours now." We sipped hot chocolate from that mug sitting on the floor because chairs felt too formal, too normal. And then the doorbell rang. For a heartbeat, some ridiculous part of me hoped it was Ryan. The grief makes you delusional, makes you bargain with impossibilities. But when I peeked through the window, my stomach twisted into knots. It was my parents. Dad in his pressed golf shirt, Mom clutching her designer handbag like armor. They looked polished, rehearsed. Emily stayed in the living room as I opened the door, already bracing for impact. "We came to check on you," Mom said, brushing past me into the entryway. "Is Emily at school?" "Good, we can talk. Red flag number 1. They settled into the living room like they owned the place, surveying the house eyes, flicking over the framed photos, the memorial flowers wilting in the corner. I made coffee out of habit, even though my hands trembled as I poured. Dad complimented the new sound system Ryan had installed weeks before his death, running his hand along the sleek speakers like we weren't drowning in grief. Kevin had good taste in electronics, he mused. "It's Ryan," I corrected, my voice flat. Dad cleared his throat, setting his mug down precisely on a coaster. I recognized that posture, the one he used before every serious talk growing up. "Olivia, we need to discuss your situation." "My situation?" "You mean..." "My husband dying. My 8-year-old losing her father. Mom exchanged a look with Dad, her expression tight like I was being unreasonable. No, sweetheart, she corrected gently. Your financial situation. My stomach churned. We're getting older, Dad explained, lacing his fingers together, the same corporate tone he used when delivering ultimatums. Our retirement fund took a hit. Healthcare is expensive. I stared at them, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. You're asking me for money. Mom had the decency to look mildly embarrassed. Dad, not so much. Family supports family, he said simply. Given Ryan's position and the life insurance payout, you can afford to help us. The audacity knocked the breath from my lungs. They weren't here to comfort me. They weren't here for Emily. They were here, hands outstretched, ready to profit from our loss. How much are you thinking? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Dad brightened, missing the ice in my tone entirely. 50% feels fair. Secures our retirement. Leaves plenty for you and Emily. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. 50%. Of my husband's life insurance? Mom leaned forward, layering on guilt like it was her second language. We raised you, Olivia, paid for your education, helped with your condo. I swallowed the rising bile. You're cashing in your parent points. Because my husband died. Dad's expression hardened, the mask slipping. Ryan should have taken better care of himself. High-stress jobs, poor health choices, this was inevitable. Blame layered beneath entitlement. Something inside me snapped the part that had been frozen by grief. Get out, I whispered the words, gaining strength as they tumbled out. Olivia, be reasonable, Mom started. Get out of my house. I stood, my pulse roaring in my ears. You couldn't be bothered to show up when I needed you. You partied while I crumbled. You have no claim to Ryan's memory, his money, or his family. Dad rose stiffly, wounded pride etched across his face. We're your parents. We deserve respect. Respect is earned, I shot back. And you've earned none. They left fuming, throwing accusations over their shoulders about ingratitude, selfishness, how family should work. I slammed the door behind them, my hands trembling, my body buzzing with rage and relief. Moments later, Emily peeked around the corner, her eyes wide. Were Grandma and Grandpa mad? I softened, kneeling to her level. They want something that doesn't belong to them. She hesitated, small hands twisting the hem of her shirt. They talked about Daddy's money at the funeral. I heard them. My heart clenched, knowing my child had absorbed more pain than any 8-year-old should. Daddy made sure we'd be okay, I assured her. But no amount of money replaces him. She nodded, her little face hardening with quiet resolve. I miss Daddy, she whispered. But I'm glad you told them to leave. So was I. Because protecting Emily wasn't just about love, it was about boundaries. Even if those boundaries fractured my family beyond repair. The funeral was supposed to be closure, a chance to honor Ryan, say goodbye, begin the impossible task of healing. Instead, it exposed every fracture in my family, the kind of cracks you can't plaster over with sympathy cards or casseroles. The morning of the service dawned unnaturally beautiful. Blue skies, crisp airbirds chirping in the trees as if the world wasn't falling apart. I spent hours helping Emily get ready, braiding her hair like Ryan used to her little blue dress, freshly ironed, the one he always said made her look like royalty. Daddy would say, I'm a princess today, she whispered, staring at her reflection. I hugged her gently, forcing back tears. He'd say, you're brave and beautiful, I corrected. And he'd be right. The funeral home buzzed with quiet, somber energy. Ryan's co-workers arrived, first solemn in dark suits, many openly crying. They weren't just grieving a colleague, they were grieving a friend, a mentor, a man who always made time for them. They shared stories about Ryan's terrible jokes, his obsession with real maple syrup, how he made spreadsheets sound exciting. Their grief was raw, genuine, human. My parents. They were supposed to arrive early, sit with us, support us. Instead, they texted 20 minutes before the service. Traffic's awful. We'll be late. I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. Typical. They arrived halfway through the eulogy, making a small commotion as they slipped into the front row seats I'd reserved for family seats that suddenly felt tainted. My mother hugged me briefly, her perfume sharp and overwhelming. Traffic was terrible, she whispered, and I had a hard time finding something appropriate to wear on such short notice. Short notice, as if Ryan's death were an inconvenient dinner party. During the service, I caught Sophia, my brother's fiancée, scrolling through her phone. My dad checked his watch. My mom dabbed at dry eyes that held no real tears. Meanwhile, Ryan's brother Nathan sat beside Emily, holding her hand tightly, their identical blue eyes filled with pain. Nathan had flown in from Seattle that morning, exhausted and hollow-eyed after the red-eye flight, but unwilling to miss a second of saying goodbye. When it was my turn to speak, my legs felt like lead. But then I saw Emily, so small, so brave, and I found the strength. I spoke about Ryan's kindness, his unwavering love for Emily, his ridiculous hatred of cilantro, his passionate defense of proper maple syrup, his belief that family came first. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me as I glanced at my parents already gathering their things, eager to escape. At the reception afterward, I moved through the house like a ghost, thanking guests, accepting condolences, ignoring the aching emptiness in every corner. My parents, they planted themselves in the living room, accepting sympathy, like they were the primary mourners, while barely lifting a finger to help. Nathan, on the other hand, quietly organized cleanup, corralled guests, and made sure Emily had space to breathe. Ryan's parents, devastated by the loss of their only son, showed more grace and support than my own family ever had. His mom, Diane, hovered protectively over Emily, ensuring she ate, shielding her from overwhelming guests. His dad, Robert, coordinated logistics, cleaned dishes, packed up leftovers. The contrast was blinding. I found my father near the kitchen, deep in conversation with Uncle James by the drinks table. His words made my stomach turn. Ryan did well for himself. That life insurance payout alone will set Olivia up for life. The investments, too. She'll be fine. Fine. My husband was dead. My daughter fatherless, my life gutted, and he reduced it to financial security. It took everything in me not to explode, but I stayed silent, knowing my moment would come. That night, after everyone left, Emily crawled into bed beside me, still clutching Ryan's t-shirt. "Mommy," she whispered, "do we have to see Grandma and Grandpa again?" Her question sliced through me. "Why do you ask, baby?" She bit her lip, eyes glossy with tears. "I heard Grandpa talking about money at the funeral. He said we'd get lots of it because Daddy died." Her words, so innocent yet so perceptive, made me physically ill. I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Your daddy made sure we'd be okay, yes. But no amount of money replaces him. Ever." She nodded, curling into me. "I don't care about money," she whispered. "I just want Daddy." "Me too, baby. Me too." The house was quiet again, the silence oppressive, the shadows long. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing the hardest part wasn't over. The funeral was just the beginning. My parents, they were circling like vultures, ready to stake their claim on our grief, but they underestimated me. Grief burns away illusions, and what's left, that's who you really are. And I was done being the obedient daughter. The audacity of it didn't hit me all at once. It settled over me like thick fog, slowly tightening around my chest until I could barely breathe. The morning after the funeral, I found the note Dad had slipped under my front door. Folded paper, neat handwriting, sterile as a business memo. "Olivia, we need to sit down and discuss practical matters regarding the life insurance payout. Please call us." Practical matters. It wasn't grief. It wasn't, "How are you holding up?" It wasn't, "Can we help with Emily?" It was dollars, percentages, neatly packaged under the guise of responsibility. I ignored the note, but Dad was nothing if not persistent. The next day, the doorbell rang. Again. This time, I saw it coming, the rehearsed sympathy, the calculated charm. My parents stood on the porch, Dad in khakis, and that same forced managerial smile, Mom adjusting her pearl necklace like we were heading into a luncheon instead of navigating the aftermath of my husband's death. Emily was at school. I'd barely convinced her to go, promising her teachers would look out for her, knowing she was one cruel question away from shattering all over again. Mom and Dad made themselves comfortable in the living room, commenting on the upgrades Ryan had made the sound system, the new recliner, as if we were catching up over coffee, not teetering on the edge of a breakdown. Then Dad got to the point. Your financial situation has shifted. He began, tone clinical. Given Ryan's job, the payout must be substantial. I stared, waiting, unwilling to make this easy. We've been discussing family obligations, Mom added, folding her hands primly in her lap. We think it's only fair, given all we've done for you, that we share in this. I blinked. Share in what exactly? Dad's eyes lit up, mistaking my calm for compliance. 50% of the life insurance payout directed to your mother and me, he stated, as if reading from a financial report. That secures our retirement, covers medical costs, and leaves plenty for you and Emily. Plenty, as if they were the accountants of my grief, calculating trauma into manageable figures. 50%, I repeated slowly, tasting the bitterness of the words. You want half of the money my husband left for his wife and daughter. Mom flinched slightly, but Dad pressed on, confident. We raised you, paid for college, supported you through tough times. It's only fair. Fair. My hands curled into fists at my sides, nails biting into my palms. Did you support me when I called you from the hospital, sobbing? I shot back, voice low, shaking. Did you support me when I told you Ryan died? And you told me to manage for the night. Their expressions shifted, walls going up, defenses clicking into place. Olivia, you're being emotional. Dad said the same condescending tone he used when I was 15 and dared to have opinions. This is practical. Family helps family. Rage simmered beneath my skin, thick and suffocating. Help goes both ways, I snapped. Where were you when I needed help, when your granddaughter needed comfort? You partied while we broke apart. Mom's face twisted, a mix of shame and indignation. We couldn't abandon Ethan's promotion celebration, she protested weakly. He worked so hard. My laugh was sharp, humorless. And Ryan worked himself into the ground, and now he's dead. But sure, let's talk about who deserves to celebrate. Dad's mask slipped, frustration cracking his corporate facade. This isn't about feelings, it's about responsibility. We deserve a portion of that money. I stood the decision crystallizing inside me like ice. You deserve nothing, I said quietly. Not a cent. Not access to Emily, not a place in our grief. They stared, shocked at my defiance, expecting the compliant daughter they'd raised, the one who kept the peace, smoothed the edges, absorbed the hurt. That version of me died with Ryan. Get out of my house, I ordered, voice steady, unfamiliar in its sharpness. Dad's mouth opened, another argument forming, but I raised a hand, silencing him. Unless you're here to comfort your grieving daughter or support your granddaughter, this conversation is over. Mom reached for me, hesitation in her eyes, but I stepped back. Respect is earned, I reminded her, and you've earned none. They left stiff, furious, muttering about reconsidering their relationship with me. The door clicked shut, sealing them out, and I exhaled, trembling, a strange, hollow victory filling my chest. For the first time since Ryan's heart stopped, I felt something other than devastation. Resolve. They wouldn't take more from me. Not my peace, not my child's future, not the legacy Ryan bled himself dry to secure. They underestimated me, and they underestimated Emily, because while I was wrestling with their betrayal, my daughter, she was quietly plotting the most brilliant revenge of all. Emily's been watching everything. You'd think at 8 years old she'd be shielded from the worst of this, the betrayal, the money talks, the quiet tension simmering in every corner of our home. But grief matures kids in the cruelest ways. She saw the cracks before I could even name them. It started the evening after my parents stormed out of our house. I was curled on the couch, staring at Ryan's favorite hoodie draped over the armrest, feeling like I was made of glass, one wrong word away from shattering. Emily tiptoed downstairs, her little notebook clutched to her chest. She sat beside me, legs crossed, determination stamped across her small, tear-streaked face. Mommy, I made something, she whispered. I smoothed her hair back, bracing for another heartbreaking drawing of our family, one where Ryan was always floating up in the sky with angel wings watching over us. But this wasn't that. She unfolded a piece of construction paper. At the top, in careful, blocky handwriting, it read, "Invoice for real love and support." My breath caught. She'd drawn neat little lines below a list of services with price tags being there when Daddy died, $0 not provided. Helping Mommy when she cried, $0 not provided. Asking me if I was okay, $0 not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless but not paid. At the bottom, bold and underlined, total owed $0. I stared at her, stunned by the quiet brilliance, the raw truth wrapped in childish scrawl. "You made an invoice?" I managed, half laughing through the tears threatening to fall. She nodded, blue eyes fierce, so much like Ryan's it made my chest ache. "Grandpa said we got money because Daddy died," she explained softly. "But they didn't earn it. They didn't help us. They don't love us the way Daddy did." I hugged her tight, my throat closing with pride and heartbreak braided together. "Sweetheart, you're incredible," I whispered. But she wasn't done. "We should give this to them," she declared. "Next time they ask about Daddy's money." Part of me wanted to protect her, shield her from this ugliness. But another part, the part shaped by Ryan's stubborn integrity, it knew this was exactly the lesson she needed. Boundaries, truth, standing your ground, even when your heart's in pieces. "Okay," I agreed quietly. "We'll do it together." Days passed. My parents sent texts, alternating between fake concern and veiled threats. "Olivia, let's be adults about this. Family comes first. You owe us a conversation." I ignored them, until the invitation arrived, a so-called family meeting at their house Sunday afternoon. "Bring Emily," they'd said. "It concerns all of us." Emily heard me reading the message and immediately darted upstairs, returning minutes later clutching her envelope. "Let's go," she declared. "We have something to deliver." That Sunday felt like preparing for battle. I dressed Emily in her favorite blue sweater, the one Ryan bought on their last daddy-daughter day. I wore simple black, my armor of choice, determined not to break under their rehearsed pity and entitlement. The drive to their house was quiet tension, thick between us. Emily clutching her manila envelope like it contained the Declaration of Independence. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed extra cars, extended family summoned as witnesses as leverage. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked, hand on the ignition, giving her one last out. She nodded firmly, small jaw, set with quiet defiance. "I'm ready, Mommy." We walked hand in hand to the door. It opened before we could knock. My mother, dressed like she was heading to Sunday brunch, her face stretched into a brittle smile. "Come in, everyone's waiting," she chirped, leading us down the familiar hallway that suddenly felt like enemy territory. The living room was packed. My dad perched in his recliner like a judge presiding over Court Sophia, scrolling her phone on the armrest, aunts, uncles, cousins, strategically placed like backup singers in this twisted performance. Dad wasted no time. "Let's get to it," he announced. "We're here to discuss the family financial situation. We've helped you, Olivia, now it's your turn to help us." He handed me a printed breakdown, percentages, dollar amounts, a full proposal on how to fairly distribute Ryan's life insurance. 65% to them, 50 for their retirement, 15 for Sophia's artistic endeavors. I stared at the paper, my fingers trembling, not from fear, but fury. "You want 65% of the money meant for your grieving granddaughter's future?" I asked flatly. "Family takes care of family," my mother insisted. I almost laughed. The same family that couldn't be bothered to leave a party when Ryan died. The room shifted, discomfort rippling through the relatives. A few avoided eye contact. Aunt Lisa looked ready to sink into the floor. Before I could unleash the words building in my chest, Emily stepped forward. "I have something to say," she announced, her small voice slicing through the tension. My mother opened her mouth, undoubtedly ready to shoo her away. But Emily held her ground the way Ryan taught her to, with quiet confidence and unwavering truth. She handed Grandpa the envelope. "It's for you," she said simply. My father unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the childishly drawn invoice. His hands trembled slightly, whether from shame or rage, I couldn't tell. The silence was absolute as every adult in the room read the words scrawled in blue marker. Being there when Daddy died, not provided. Helping Mommy when she cried, not provided. Real grandparents priceless but not paid. Total owed $0. Tears burned behind my eyes, not from grief this time, but pride so fierce it nearly knocked me off my feet. Emily looked directly at them, her voice steady. You only came when you wanted money. You didn't help us. You didn't care. The truth so plain from a child's mouth landed harder than any argument I could have crafted. For the first time, my parents were speechless. I took Emily's hand, my voice low but unwavering. We're done here. Unless you plan on showing real love, not dollar signs, stay away. And with that, we left, leaving them stunned, exposed, and powerless in the wake of an 8-year-old's brutal honesty. The drive home from my parents' house felt lighter somehow, like a storm had passed. Even though the clouds of grief still hovered, something fundamental had shifted. Emily sat quietly in the back seat, watching the trees blur by the manila envelope now empty on her lap. But her eyes, they weren't hollow the way they'd been these past few weeks. There was a flicker of pride, a hint of the resilience Ryan always said she carried. Mommy, she asked softly, breaking the silence as I turned down our street. Yeah, baby, did we do the right thing? I exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel tighter as the ache in my chest pulsed again, the ache that never really left since the hospital call. I think standing up for ourselves is always the right thing, I told her honestly. Even when it's hard. Even when it's family. She nodded thoughtfully, her little brow furrowed in concentration, the way Ryan's used to when reading to her. We pulled into the driveway, our house standing still and quiet against the setting sun. It felt emptier than ever, but also safe for the first time in days. Safe from the storm my parents had tried to drag through our door. But I knew it wasn't over. Sure enough, the next morning my phone buzzed with a flood of texts. From Dad. We need to have a civilized discussion, Olivia. From Mom, family comes first. We've sacrificed for you. You owe us. From Sophia, predictably. You've always been selfish, but this disgusting. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Nathan. Ryan's brother picked up on the first ring, his voice groggy but alert, thousands of miles away in Seattle, but still somehow exactly where I needed him to be. They came for the money, didn't they? He asked flatly after I explained. I laughed bitterly. How'd you guess? Because Ryan told me to expect this. The line went quiet for a moment, heavy with unsaid history. He suspected your dad would pull something after he passed, Nathan admitted. We talked about it. He updated everything, the will, the insurance, even set up protections for Emily's future. A lump formed in my throat. He never told me. Didn't want to stress you out, Nathan said softly. He always tried to carry the weight quietly, but he made sure you two were covered, no loopholes. Tears blurred my vision, but relief flooded in behind them, a steadying warmth Ryan had left behind even in his absence. They can't touch a penny, Nathan continued. Thomas handled the legal stuff airtight. Thomas, Ryan's friend and our estate attorney, had been quietly checking in, offering support without pushing. Now it was time to lean on him. I met with Thomas that afternoon in his office, the sterile scent of fresh paper and polished wood oddly comforting. They have no legal claim, he confirmed, flipping through the meticulously organized documents Ryan had left behind. It's clear, ironclad. You and Emily are protected. Could they contest it? Try to drag this out, I asked, dreading more public drama, more whispered accusations. They can try, Thomas admitted, but they'd lose. It's airtight, and they know it. Part of me relaxed, but only slightly. My parents weren't known for giving up easily, especially when pride and money were on the line. Over the next week, they escalated their tactics. Flowers arrived at my door with syrupy apology notes. We misunderstood your grief. We only want what's fair. Don't let outsiders manipulate you. Translation. We got caught. We still want the payout. I blocked their numbers, informed the school to restrict access, even alerted my workplace. But manipulation has layers, and they peeled them back one by one. They sent relatives to talk sense into me, Guilt trip emails laced with family photos, reminders of holidays gone by the curated version of our family they wanted everyone to believe still existed. But memory keeps receipts. Every missed recital, every time Sophia's art show trumped my milestones, every dismissal of my hurt, it all stacked up, forming an undeniable pattern. And now they wanted to rewrite history with dollar signs. But this wasn't about money anymore, it was about control. About reminding me who they thought I owed loyalty to, regardless of how they treated me. But grief cracks illusions wide open. Ryan's death stripped everything down to the barest truths: who shows up when it counts, and who circles like vultures when you're most vulnerable. The real family. It wasn't about shared DNA, it was about shared values, unwavering support. Nathan proved that flying back weeks later, suitcase in hand, exhaustion etched across his face. "I'm not letting you go through this alone," he declared, dropping his bag by the door. "Ryan made me promise." Friends showed up too. Ellen, our neighbor, delivered casseroles and offered late-night company when sleep refused to come. Ryan's coworkers checked in, organized a college fund. For Emily, sent cards filled with stories and memories that helped keep him alive in small ways. And through it all, Emily watched. She absorbed the lessons Ryan had always quietly taught her, the ones about kindness, resilience, and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. My parents could threaten, manipulate, guilt, but they couldn't rewrite the truth. And Emily? She was already writing her own version, one filled with boundaries, honesty, and the strength Ryan left in both of us. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time, I wasn't drowning. I was ready to fight for the future Ryan wanted us to have. If grief teaches you anything, it's how to tell the difference between real love and performative concern. The people who show up, the ones who sit with you in your mess without needing to fix it, they're rare. But when your world collapses, they reveal themselves. For me, those people weren't my parents. They weren't the ones with the same last name, the same childhood photo albums tucked away in closets. They were the unexpected ones, the neighbors' friends, the family Ryan gave me when he married me. Nathan became my anchor in those weeks after the funeral. He flew in from Seattle with barely more than a backpack and grief-soaked eyes, but his presence, steady, solid, familiar in all the ways that mattered. Emily adored him instantly, unsurprising, considering how much he reminded her of Ryan. The same crooked smile, the same bad jokes, the same way he burned pancakes, but tried anyway. We settled into a fragile rhythm, mornings making breakfast, afternoons filled with paperwork and awkward logistics, evenings curled on the couch sharing stories about Ryan. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was breathing space. And then there was Ellen, our next-door neighbor, retired teacher, unofficial community watchdog. She brought over casseroles, babysat Emily when I needed an hour to myself, sat at my kitchen table drinking too strong tea while I vented about the growing circus my parents had unleashed. They always struck me as polished, she mused one evening, slicing into a casserole that neither of us had the appetite for. But grief reveals character, and honey, you've got yours intact. I smiled weakly, appreciating the sentiment even if I wasn't sure I believed it. My parents, on the other hand, their character cracks widened daily. The manipulation escalated. After the invoices and the failed family meeting, they switched tactics. Guilt trips flooded my inbox. "You're punishing your family for grieving differently. Don't let outsiders like Nathan influence you. You owe us respect after everything we've done." When that didn't work, they went public. Snide social media posts from Sophia about ungrateful daughters. Cryptic comments on family group threads designed to paint me as selfish, greedy, cold. The irony. They accused me of being heartless for protecting my daughter, for safeguarding the life Ryan and I built, the one they never invested in emotionally, only now showing interest when there was something to gain. But the louder they got, the clearer their motives became. They weren't grieving Ryan, they were grieving lost control. And Emily. My little warrior saw through every bit of it. One evening, as we colored at the kitchen table, she looked up, head tilted thoughtfully. "Grandma used to tell me family is about love," she said simply. But She only shows up when she wants something. Her words, so small yet so profound, landed like a stone in my chest. "She's wrong, isn't she?" Emily asked, chewing her lip nervously. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Real family shows up, without conditions, without keeping score." She nodded, the fierce determination I recognized from Ryan flickering in her eyes. Meanwhile, my parents doubled down. They sent legal threats claiming entitlement to Ryan's estate, hinting at contesting the will. Thomas, our lawyer, shut it down swiftly with paperwork and sharp letters of his own. But the emotional fallout, that was harder to navigate. Extended relatives, unsure of the full story, reached out with cautious concern. "Maybe there's been a misunderstanding. Your parents are hurting too. Can't you just compromise?" The word burned. Because I had, for years, swallowed every slight, every dismissal, every instance where Sophia was prioritized, where I played the role of the easy daughter, the one who didn't rock the boat. But burying your husband cracks something inside you wide open. You can't unsee the fractures. Grief stripped away the layers of obligation, revealing the raw truth. I didn't owe anyone access to my life just because we shared blood. I owed Emily protection, stability, love that wasn't conditional or transactional. Nathan reinforced that daily. He taught Emily chess, patiently explaining the pieces, celebrating every victory, laughing off every loss, reminding her that strategy matters both on the board and in life. "You've got to protect your queen, kiddo," he teased, nudging her shoulder one evening. "The world comes for her first." The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Ryan's absence left a gaping hole in our lives, but Nathan's presence, the quiet, steady, brotherly kind, helped bridge the gaps. Meanwhile, my parents' attempts faltered. Blocked calls, unanswered emails, legal threats dismantled by airtight documents Ryan had prepared with his usual quiet foresight. But they weren't done yet. They tried to show up at Emily's school, cornering teachers, asking questions, spinning half-truths about being cut off from their granddaughter. The principal, bless her cautious professionalism, called me immediately. "We prioritize safety here," she assured me, her voice crisp. "No unauthorized contact. You have nothing to worry about." But I did worry, not because they'd win legally, but because they'd chip away at Emily's sense of safety. So I drew the lines deeper. Restraining boundaries, legal safeguards, emotional walls higher than ever. It wasn't out of spite, it was survival. And through it all, Emily blossomed. Grief etched into her small frame, yes. But so did strength. The kind of strength only forged when you watch the people you trust try to fracture your world and refuse to let them. We were building something new, messy, imperfect, but real. Chosen family over forced obligation. The storm wasn't over, but we weren't standing in the wreckage alone. Grief isn't linear, anyone who's lived through it knows that. You take 3 steps forward, 1 gut punch back. Some days you feel okay, almost normal. Other days, brushing your teeth feels like a victory. But betrayal. Betrayal has a timeline all its own. And my parents were on a schedule. They weren't about to let go of their narrative without exhausting every manipulative avenue available. After the school incident failed, they escalated. Passive-aggressive voicemails. "We're still your parents, Olivia. Don't punish Emily by keeping her from her grandparents. Your husband wouldn't want this family divided." The hypocrisy choked me. Ryan had spent his life building bridges with me, with Emily, even attempting peace with my family, despite their favoritism, their dismissiveness. But the one thing he never tolerated: greed, disguised as love. And that's exactly what this was. They tried ambushes next, showing up at my office, sliding cards under the door at home, dropping off flowers with saccharine notes about forgiveness and family unity. But their version of unity came with strings, conditions, dollar signs. It wasn't love. It was leverage. They even roped in distant relatives, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, calling to mediate, conveniently parroting my parents' side of the story. "You've always been so headstrong, Liv," they'd say, faux concern dripping from every word. "Can't you just compromise?" That word again, like my boundaries were negotiable, like Emily's future was a bargaining chip. But grief. Grief sharpens your instincts. You learn quickly who's here to help, and who's circling for their own gain. The allies I didn't expect. They showed up quietly, but fiercely. Aunt Barbara, my dad's brother's wife, called one evening, her voice steady, but laced with quiet anger. "We're not all behind this, Olivia," she promised. "Your father. Your mother. They're embarrassed you're standing your ground. But Terry and I, we see it. We've seen it for years." Her validation chipped away at the isolation I'd wrapped myself in. Then came the most unexpected message, my cousin Jennifer Sophia's daughter. An email short but packed with raw honesty. "I've watched how they've treated you my whole life. You're not wrong to set boundaries. I wish I'd had your courage." It made me ache for her, for all of us conditioned to believe family means unquestioned loyalty, even at the expense of our peace. Meanwhile, Emily, she was thriving in her quiet, determined way. Her art projects grew bolder. Her confidence in chess blossomed under Nathan's patient guidance. She asked questions about boundaries, about trust, about what family really means, and I answered honestly, even when the truth hurt. Sometimes I told her, smoothing her hair back during one of our late-night talks, "Family isn't about who shares your name. It's about who shows up when it matters." She nodded wide-eyed, but understanding far more than any 8-year-old should. But the manipulation wasn't done yet. My parents tried one last public stunt, spreading rumors at church, hinting that I'd cut them off, denied them their grandchild, painted me as the villainous widow hoarding her late husband's money. The narrative twisted into community whispers, side-eyed glances at the grocery store, hushed gossip at the park. But here's the thing about grief-fueled clarity: you stop caring about optics. The truth, it doesn't need validation, it stands on its own. And people, they talk. They fill gaps with assumptions. But real allies, they see through the noise. Nathan's unwavering presence, Ellen's quiet support, Aunt Barbara's defiant loyalty, they anchored me. And Thomas, meticulous as ever, kept the legal walls sturdy. "Let them try," he reassured me after the latest batch of veiled threats. "Their case holds less water than a leaky faucet." Still, the emotional exhaustion compounded daily. But through the cracks, light seeped in. Emily's resilience, her art projects cluttering the fridge, Nathan's terrible pancake attempts every Saturday morning. We laughed again, hesitant at first, but growing steadier. The hole Ryan left, it never shrank, but we built around it. We honored him in small ways: the maple syrup in the fridge, the dinosaur-shaped pancakes, the chess lessons, and I promised myself his love, his sacrifices. They wouldn't be tainted by greed, my parents. They underestimated me. They underestimated Emily. But grief, when channeled right, becomes armor. And our family, the one built on love, respect not bloodlines, was stronger than ever. They tried everything. But manipulation, guilt trips, whisper campaigns, they all failed. Because you can't bully someone who's already lost everything and survived. And we were still standing. It's funny how people who've never truly supported you still believe they have unlimited access to your life. That was my parents, a lifetime of conditional love, followed by the assumption that grief would soften me, make me pliable. But loss doesn't always weaken you. Sometimes it burns everything down, so the real foundation can finally settle in place. The weeks after their last stunt were eerily quiet. The texts slowed. The unexpected appearances stopped. It felt like the eye of the storm, unnerving, but a reprieve I wasn't about to question. Then the letter arrived. Not an email, not a voicemail. A real handwritten letter on plain stationery, no business logos, no veiled legal threats. It came addressed to both me and Emily. My first instinct: rip it up, toss it, pretend the envelope never breached our threshold. But closure. Sometimes it demands confrontation. So I sat at the kitchen table, Emily playing quietly with markers nearby, and opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Dad's neat slanted script, Mom's loops filling the margins. "Dear Olivia and Emily, we've spent these past weeks reflecting on our behavior. There are no excuses for what we did. We allowed grief, pride, and selfishness to cloud our judgment. We failed you both, and we failed Ryan's memory. We aren't asking for forgiveness, only the opportunity to someday show we can be better." I read it twice, disbelief warring with cautious hope. They listed specifics: the party they refused to leave when Ryan died, the financial demands, the manipulation, the public rumors. For the first time in my life, they acknowledged their actions without redirecting blame or sugarcoating their intentions. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was different. I showed Nathan later that evening, his expression unreadable as he scanned the pages. "They finally figured out you're done playing the good daughter," he murmured, setting the letter down. "But words are easy. Actions, those take work." He was right. I tucked the letter away, not ready to decide if this was a genuine turning point or another carefully crafted performance. But I noticed a subtle shift in the days that followed. The social media jabs disappeared. The relatives stopped calling with thinly veiled guilt trips. Even Sophia, queen of passive aggression, fell silent. And for the first time in months, Emily slept through the night without nightmares. The calm didn't erase the ache, it just made space for healing. We rebuilt routines. Saturday pancake breakfasts returned Nathan's versions, still slightly charred, but Emily devoured them with pride. We went for long walks, told stories about Ryan, turned grief into conversation, rather than an unspoken shadow looming over every moment. Emily asked harder questions now, but they came wrapped in curiosity, not devastation. Why did Grandma and Grandpa act like that? I chose honesty laced with compassion. Sometimes people make bad choices when they're hurting, but that doesn't mean we let them hurt us again. She nodded her little hands, busy sketching yet another art project, this one of our family, just the two of us, Nathan and Ryan, floating above with a goofy grin. The simplicity of it, healing in its purest form, but closure. It has a wicked sense of timing. Weeks later, another letter arrived, simpler, shorter. "We're trying. We hope someday you'll give us a chance to prove it." I wasn't ready to open that door fully. But Emily. Her compassion outpaced even my guarded heart. "Maybe they can come to my birthday," she suggested quietly one night, curled beside me under a blanket. "Why?" I asked, curious, cautious. She shrugged, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "Daddy said, people need to see themselves clearly to change. Maybe they're seeing now." Her words hit harder than any lecture. Ryan's wisdom echoed through her, a reminder that grace doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean choosing peace when you're ready. We set boundaries clear and non-negotiable, a public meeting, no financial conversations. 1 hour supervised, strictly focused on Emily. They agreed. The day of her 9th birthday, they showed up small, quiet, unfamiliar in their restraint. They brought a book about astronomy, not pink, glittery nonsense Emily had long outgrown. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was effort measured in small, careful steps. We met in a neutral place, surrounded by families, laughter enough noise to dull the awkwardness. They asked about school, her art, her chess games with Nathan. They didn't overstep. They didn't prod about money. They stayed in their lane. It wasn't reconciliation. It was the first brick in a cautious new foundation. And when they left, Mom whispered, "Thank you for letting us try." I nodded, non-committal, but open, wary, but hopeful. Because forgiveness, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And family, it's defined by actions, not genetics. We weren't fixed, but we were stronger, wiser, clearer about the boundaries grief had etched in stone. Ryan's absence would always ache, but his legacy, the fierce love, the courage to stand tall, the strength to protect what matters, that lived in us. And the life we were rebuilding, it was finally ours to shape. The first anniversary of Ryan's death approached with the quiet dread of a storm you see coming miles away, but can't outrun. I expected the grief to swell like a tidal wave, pulling me back under, leaving me gasping for air, the way I'd felt in those first raw, unbearable weeks. But instead the day came wrapped in stillness. Heavy, somber, yes, but also woven with threads of unexpected strength. We held a small memorial in our backyard. Nothing grand, nothing performative, just friends, neighbors, and family who showed up for the right reasons. Diane and Robert, Ryan's parents, flew in early. Diane baked Ryan's favorite cookies, with Emily filling the kitchen with the scent of butter and bittersweet chocolate, a sensory time machine back to simpler days. Robert patiently showed Emily how to skip stones at the park, sharing stories of Ryan as a kid, mischievous, stubborn, always carrying that quiet kindness Emily inherited. Nathan stayed for the week, sleeping on our couch, burning pancakes in the morning, teaching Emily chess strategies in the afternoon, his presence steady as ever. And my parents, they showed up to the memorial. Tentative, subdued, their usual bravado stripped away. They brought a photo album. I didn't know existed pictures of Ryan at family events. Rare moments when love wasn't tangled up in expectation. They didn't dominate the space. They didn't make the day about themselves. They stayed quiet, respectful, present, in the only way that felt acceptable. It wasn't absolution, but it was effort, and for once it wasn't transactional. Emily hovered near me, watching everything with those perceptive eyes that saw more than most adults. After the guests left and the house returned to its familiar, echoing quiet, she climbed onto my lap, curling into my side. "Do you think Daddy's proud of us?" she whispered. I kissed the top of her head, holding her tighter. "I know he is," I whispered back, and I believed it. Because despite the fractures, the betrayal, the hurt, we were still standing, stronger, boundaried, rebuilding our family on love that couldn't be bought, sold, or manipulated. Sophia eventually reached out too, hesitant, raw, admitting insecurities I hadn't realized ran so deep. I've always felt less than she confessed during coffee one afternoon. And when Ryan left you stable, I let jealousy poison everything. Her honesty didn't erase the damage, but it cracked open the door to a relationship that wasn't built on resentment. We weren't fixed overnight. But little by little, the walls came down. I still missed Ryan with every fiber of my being. His absence was a shadow that clung to birthday's milestones, quiet mornings when the coffee brewed and his chair sat empty. But grief reshaped itself into something I could carry. And through the cracks, light poured in small joys, hard-earned peace, the understanding that family isn't defined by obligation, but by love and choice. Emily thrived. School projects, art contests, late-night talks about space life and boundaries that even an 8-year-old could understand better than some adults. And me, I kept going. Not because the pain faded, but because Ryan's love left blueprints I refused to abandon. On the second anniversary of his death, Emily and I returned to his favorite lakeside bench. The water glittered under the sun waves, lapping gently, carrying whispers of old memories. We sat side by side, her hand small, but sure in mine. "Mommy," she said thoughtfully, skipping a stone across the surface, "remember how Daddy always said being kind doesn't mean letting people hurt you?" I smiled, the ache familiar, but softened around the edges. "I remember, baby." But just as I reached for the keys to leave the lake, my phone buzzed unknown number. My first instinct, ignore it. But something about the notification made my heart skip. A text popped up. "Olivia, it's Jennifer, Sophia's daughter." I frowned. Jennifer and I were never close. She was always part of Sophia's world, cool, distant, carrying the same polished, rehearsed energy. But her next message, it made my blood run cold. "I know what your parents are doing, and there's something you need to see." A letter. From Ryan. My mom's been hiding it. My grip on the phone tightened, breath catching in my throat. A letter I typed, fingers trembling. Her reply came fast. No hesitation, Ryan sent it to my mom 6 months ago, warning her about everything, about your parents, about the money, about Emily. "You deserve to know." The world tilted. Ryan, he knew. He saw this coming. He tried to protect us, even from beyond the grave. I glanced at Emily sitting in the back seat, her blue eyes filled with that quiet strength, so much like her father's. "We're not done here," I whispered to myself. "Your dad left us more than they ever expected. This story far from over." And the truth, it was about to come out. Then I think, we're doing okay. She was right. We weren't whole, but we were healing. Brick by brick, boundary by boundary, breath by breath. This family, the one built on love, resilience, and the courage to say no when it matters, it was ours. And it was enough. Grief changes you, it scrapes you raw, reshapes your edges, peels back every layer until only the essential remains. Losing Ryan felt impossible, unbearable. Some days it still does. The ache of his absence nestles into quiet moments. The morning coffee, the glance at his hoodie draped over the chair, the space beside me that stays empty, no matter how many times I reach for it. But even in loss, there's clarity, the kind that burns through illusion, exposing the fragile truths we sometimes ignore. My parents' betrayal, it revealed the cracks that had always been there, cracks disguised as obligation, politeness, duty. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't about shared DNA. It's about shared love, shared respect, showing up when it matters without conditions. We're still healing, still navigating the complex layers of loss and fragile reconciliation. There are scars visible and hidden, but there's also hope stitched together by small, everyday victories. Emily's laughter, Nathan's terrible pancakes, quiet nights filled with stories of the man we lost but refused to forget. If you've faced betrayal in your darkest hour, if you've had to stand your ground against the very people who should have protected you, please know you're not alone. Protecting yourself, your peace, your child's future. That's not selfish, it's survival. We're still standing, still learning, still loving fiercely and unapologetically. And every day, in small, stubborn ways, we honor Ryan, with kindness, with strength, with boundaries that hold firm, because family is defined by love and respect, not blood. Thank you for listening to our journey. And wherever you are, may you find your worth, your peace, and your own version of family that holds space for every part of your story.